ton of notes here. But Wally's intro here, talking about the soft side of coaching. I love this because why is the soft side so freaking hard? It's actually the hardest part of coaching to me. In my experience as a coach, and again, I was a football coach. Um, football is a heavy X's and O's sport. You have to execute precisely on the X's and O's. The problem is you got a whole other team out there trying to disrupt what you're doing. And so, when you play football, when you coach football, you're focused heavily on the mechanics of the sport, the tactical and practical, and very little on the soft stuff, which is what makes athletes able to do what they're able to do is actually the soft stuff. So I thought that was an interesting intro. But Tim, back to what you were saying. Well, I wrote this down. At some point in your discussion there, you said you were asked to write a thesis about 7 practice plans to improve the deficiencies and weaknesses that you'd observed. And my immediate thought, based on this program that we've created, is what do you mean you observed them? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean you looked at some kids and thought they needed something, or did you actually know specifically what they needed? And I relate that to, relate all of this to teaching. So I'll back up to the genesis of this platform. So it's called Power Player, and it's a feedback platform wrapped around a performance evaluation system. And it came about because when my son was about 15, maybe, I guess, I can't remember, but he started to get scouted by junior coaches, and they would come and watch him play, and they would literally watch him play. That's what they did. They just sat in the stands and looked at him, and then they would ask to have a meeting. And he's 15. He's a minor, right? Like I'm his attorney at that point in his life, and I'm like I'm in the meeting too. So I sat in the meetings, and these coaches, and they were guys mostly. I'll say guys. They would say, yeah, listen, we really like what we see out there. Um, you know, what do you think your strengths are as a hockey player? And my son, 15, Mr. Mumbles, he's like, well, I'm a pretty good skater, I guess, And they go, yeah, we think you look like a really good skater. Why don't you move to Flin Flon, Manitoba, and play for us? And I'm like, I would go home after these meetings. I'd be like, is that it? Is this really how this works? Somebody watches. They have no empirical data about this kid whatsoever. They don't know how he's progressed. They don't know if he's plateaued as a skater. They don't know if he's still improving as a skater. They see a snapshot in time, and they try to make the best decision they can make based on snapshot data. Now, if that guy was from the University of California and he was recruiting my son for the, quantum physics program, he'd probably want to see some data. He wouldn't look through the window and watch him do a math test and go, hey, you look like you're pretty good at math. And my son would go, yeah, I'm pretty good at differential calculation. Like, that's not how that would work. There would be a ton of data, a whole lifetime of data to back up how this person is doing in this specific activity. So I would go home after these coach meetings and just kind of like, man, there's got to be some place where this data, somebody's got to be doing this. So this was 8. My son's 27 now, survived a brain tumor, and is now a firefighter. So I'm very proud of him. But he was 15 at the time, so this was a long time ago. I got on the internet, started looking around. There was nothing like that did this, nothing. So I scratched out the beginning of this program, shared it with a friend of mine who actually was my client at the time, is now my business partner, and at one point had been my employee. And he had a young son who was about 6 getting into hockey. And Steve is not a hockey guy either. He's a basketball guy. He played NCAA basketball. And he's like, his kid's 6. And he's like, man, these hockey parents are nuts. He's been in it like 1 year. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. And he goes, and he goes, my son spends 70% of the practice standing around doing nothing. What's going on with that? And I'm like, we can get into that later. But so I explained the concept of power player to him, what I thought was missing in coaching. And to make a long story short, we all got together. A bunch of us got together in a hotel in Buffalo and probably had a few too many beers in the bar and decided we were dumb enough to try to do this. So we did it. So we built this platform. And basically it's a tool for coaches to provide a continuous stream of feedback, the same as your child's teacher would provide to you as a parent. You get quiz results, homework grades, test scores, parent teacher conferences. This isn't your teacher, your son or daughter's teacher after class going, hey, great job today, see you next week. This is them methodically informing both you and your child of their progress. And it comes back to what Tim said, weaknesses and deficiencies. When my son was not doing well in Spanish, it was pretty obvious. So, we asked him, do you want to do well in Spanish? And if that was hockey, I'd be saying, do you want to do well in hockey? Hockey's optional. It's not what you are required to do. Unfortunately, Spanish, you can say unfortunately, but it's required. So the fact that there's no metrics, no even subjective feedback, very little coming from youth sports coaches to parents and to kids is, in my mind, something that can be rectified. Technology allows that to be rectified. And in my opinion, we've got a platform that can do that. So back to Tim, your point, so you got to design 7 practice plans to help improve weaknesses and deficiencies. Are you talking about for the team, or are you talking about for my daughter? Like which weaknesses and deficiencies, and within my daughter, which specific weaknesses and deficiencies are you looking at? And then once you've decided how to design the practice specifically for my daughter, how will you know if you succeed? If you don't have a benchmark, you don't have any metrics from what she was like 7 practices ago, how will you know if these 7 practices have improved this thing or these things? And then, when you get into that discussion, the metrics are obviously different for 7-year-olds, or maybe there's no metrics for 7-year-olds. I'm not a big believer in metrics for 7-year-olds. I just don't think that's, Wally and I have had a few discussions about this, but when you're 16 and you're a AAA player, that's different, and there's not a huge gap between 7 and 16. It goes by like that. So, our question to all coaches is, what are the metrics? If the metrics are wins, then that's all I got to worry about. Like, then tell me up front as a parent, if I'm going to pay $10,000, that was my daughter's fees to play AAA hockey in Chicago, $10,000. And then, your focus is on winning, and therefore you're not going to put my kid on the ice for 10 grand. I need to know that. I need to know that now. I need to make that informed decision. On the other hand, if your goal is improvement in my daughter, and therefore improvement in everybody's daughters that are on your team, and therefore improvement in the team and probably wins, that's a whole different approach. So I need to know these things up front. And Wally was gracious enough to take myself and my partner Steve and a few of the coaches that use our platform through his mission statement exercise. And they all found, I've connected with them afterwards, Wally, they all found it incredibly helpful. Alignment of expectations, alignment of goals. And really what Power Player, I'll just kind of wrap this up, what it does is it's a way to communicate within the Bermuda Triangle of coach, player, parent. That it's a bad place. And again, I've had 2 kids go through youth hockey. I would rate most of those coaches on communication. If they were in the power player system and I was able to rate them, most of them, they would have they would have weaknesses and deficiencies. Let's say that. And I think communication in any relationship, personal, business, sports, whatever, it's critical. So that's the essence of what we're about. And I if anybody wants to see this thing, you can go to the website. But if you want to see how it works in practice, we can take you through a demo and click you around in this thing. But it collects both objective and subjective data, and what the coach provides is up to the coach. Okay, if you're coaching 7-year-olds, you don't need to provide me with a million metrics. You should benchmark my kids skating maybe at the beginning of the year, and then tell me how they do at the end of the year. Like, give me some metrics on that. Not the eye test. This is from the 1920s. Yeah, they passed the eye test. Like what? No, give me something I can actually look at, and then do you have the wherewithal, or does their next coach have the wherewithal to help that child improve in that specific? And then you're down to, as Wally and I have discussed recently, body mechanics, biomechanics, stance, balance, basic stuff. Do you have the wherewithal to do that? To me, it's an untapped. It's a potential advantage that's just not being used. And I think when I hear the word soft side, we don't do this stuff because it's not soft. It's hard. It's really hard. You're talking about people's, measuring people at the right times, and then, the other aspect of this is providing them with encouragement and what we call prescriptive feedback, which isn't, hey, good game, or hey, you got to catch that ball. My best football coach told me, never coach the obvious. You're not coaching if you're coaching the obvious. Tell me how to do things specifically, and right down to the minutest detail, and you've got my attention as a parent. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to take too much time here. That's what we're about.
Dave, before I ask anybody if they have any questions, Tracy and I have played with this, and we played with it with Jordan Fenton yesterday. In other words, took us through a run of the program, and Jordan started relating it to the way that education is evaluated now. It's ongoing. It's not periodic. It's just ongoing daily communication between the parent and the student, and it's just like here between the parent and the player. So the app is privy to the coach staff, I believe, Dave, and the player and the parent. And that what's resulted is a respectful relationship, the parents appreciating the time and attention given to their child, and the coaches becoming more aware and conscious of the impact of their efforts. So it's a win-win situation, which absolutely gets people on the same page and just trying to get better at what you do, whether you're the coach or the teacher or you're the student. We all want the same thing. So
yeah,
I viewed that side of the app, that he didn't, he never really went into the skill tests and the drills to measure, but objectively provide metrics. And never went into the intangibles, where the coaches actually do a behavioral report card on their players periodically.
Yeah, I won't.
You,
I mean,
you won't go into details.
I can hold up to the camera here. It's basically, it's on your phone. It's that there for hockey, we have multiple sports in the platform, but for hockey, the main categories are skating, puck skills, fitness, intangibles. There's a practice module, gameplay, and then there's a custom module. So, for example, if you think about practice, I forget what it is, and I've been out of hockey for a while as a coach. But USA Hockey, Tim, what's the guideline for number of practices to game? What's the ratio they recommend?
I think it's 2-1.
2-1. Jeez, it should be like 5-1. And I'm not sure what it is in Canada. Is it
3-1, I believe.
So,
Kim, you shook your head. What is it?
I live in Toronto, man. It's like the money side of, we get 2-1 usually, and sometimes we get 3, but like, most, I would say most of our teams are practicing 60 to 70 times a season and playing 60 to 70 games. So when it all comes shaken out, it's probably 1-1. To be honest with you.
You asked what the recommendation was, and I think I'm close to accurate on that. But our experience here is the same as Kim's. The kids will be on the ice 55 or 60 times for practice, and I think they're scheduled right now to play 48 games. Right. And this is a 12U team, and so it's.
So when I was coaching, I'm sure maybe you guys have heard this too, but my coaches always said, you got to play like you practice, right? And as a player, I was always like, yeah, it's bullshit. That's not true. That's not true. I'm going to show up to practice. I guess football is a little bit different. We played I think a 14 game schedule, and we practiced 5 nights a week. So I wasn't going 100% in practice. I know I wasn't. I was not going 100% practice, and because the only thing that matters is what? The games, right? Like that's. Kids aren't stupid. They know that the things you keep score in are the things that matter. So you only keep score in games. So how can you tell me I got to practice hard? You don't mean that, because there's no scoring in practice. There's no consequence, emotional or any other way, if I don't play hard in practice. So, they're not stupid. Even a 5-year-old, when my kids were little and we had a rink in our backyard here when it used to be cold enough, they would keep score out on the rink in the backyard. They knew that scoring creates competition. It creates intensity. There's a reason it's there. So, there's a practice module within the Power Player program, and we've had coaches at various levels give us little anecdotes about how they use this practice scoring. It's a rating system. So, it's 4 simple sliders. It's, work ethic in practice, attention level. I forget, I should know this. I forget what the other things are, but there's 4 sliders. So you can pick a random Thursday night and, provide all of your players with a practice rating, and the system boils it down to, a number, right? And when we were creating this, I was working on it. My daughter was still in high school at the time. She looked over my shoulder and she's like, "What's that?" I said, "Well, how would you feel next season if your coach told you were going to get rated in practice?" And she kind of looked at me like, "Okay." And I said, "You just won't know which one. It might be tonight. It might not be tonight. It might be tomorrow." And she gave me that, teenager look like, I guess I'd have to skate harder all the time then. And I'm like, yeah. So we've had coaches tell us this is how they use the platform. It's not an all the time thing. It's a once in a while thing. And providing a rating on a practice to an athlete randomly, it does a lot of things, but it tells them that you are watching them, that you are actually paying attention, and that practice has a score. It has a consequence. I've had one college coach tell me he told all his players at the beginning of the season they're going to rate the practices randomly. And he said, low practice rating for the week is the healthy scratch on the weekend. Now that's college kids. And he said, their practices were like, playoff games. Nobody wanted to be that scratch. So it raised the intensity. I had another guy tell me he's coaching 10-year-olds, and they'd provided a few practice ratings here and there. And he noticed, his practice was lagging a little bit. The kids weren't really into it. So He said, I skated over to the bench and I had a little bag there and I kept my iPad in there. He says, I pulled the iPad out and I just leaned against the boards and the assistant coaches were doing a skating drill or something. He goes, I pulled the iPad out and he goes, I wasn't logged on. I just pulled the iPad out and I just looked at it. And he said, there's always one kid that notices, hey, Coach Dave's got the iPad up and he must be rating us right now. These are 10-year-olds. All of a sudden, energy level up. So, the soft side of sport is the psychological side of it. And your body does what your brain allows it to do, right? I mean, so it's a coach's job to not just coach your physicality, but to coach your psychology as well. And to me, that's why the soft side is so hard. It's a difficult nut to crack. But we've tried to create a platform that begins to enable that. I think, Kim, you raised your hand there. Or?
Yeah, I raised my hand. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll start with this one. I mean, aren't we supposed to talk to our players?
Absolutely.
So no, and I mean that honestly. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't mean that facetiously.
No,
I just mean it to say, like, and I do a ton of feedback with my players in communication, and it's actually the number one thing I get rated on consistently for the last 15 years. So I'm not.
Can my daughter play for you?
Absolutely. I'm not coaching this year, but she can come work for me.
Well, she's 22 now. So.
But I know in working with, and I've mostly worked with teenage girls, so that would be my sort of target audience. What they see clicked in an app versus that 4-second conversation I say with them, hey, like, I see you're really working hard today, like, keep it up or whatever. I mean, that's worth 100 times what I click in an app. So, and I don't mean to dismiss what is in the app, because I do agree the tracking and the consistency, and I can't necessarily track mentally, have I got the touches on all 17 players or 18 players during a practice. So I do think there's, a value in being able to do it consistently. I would also argue that we do keep score in practice, or at least I did, but I'm super competitive. And usually at the levels I'm coaching, I'm surrounded by similarly focused players. So I would be cautious about making it, sort of adversarial and saying, well, if you don't get, whoever's at the bottom of the pile here isn't going to get to play, but we're in minor hockey, so we're not really doing that. But I also wonder, I don't think my dad ever talked to me about hockey. My dad knows a lot about hockey. I just, I wonder if this is potentially swinging, those car conversations or those dinner table conversations in, a challenging way. Like, do the parent and player know too much, or is there some area where just the player needs to have that relationship with the coach, and maybe mom and dad don't need to know every single rating and ranking? I think there's a bit of a trust what I'm doing sort of thing here. But like I said, I haven't tried it yet, so I don't mean, I'm just giving some insights, I guess. But I think in girls hockey, comparison is the thief of joy, and the girls are horrible at it, and it's constant, and it's fear of missing out. And so if everyone knows the practice is rated on Tuesday, I guarantee every player is going to know, oh, what did you get for hard work, and what did you get for this? And again, is that good or bad? I don't know. But I could see in a female hockey environment, it could have its challenges, and it could also have its benefits. But I just think, I don't know, if there was a way to clone ourselves and we could each, like the NHL, where you all have 6 skills coaches and 4 assistants, and there's some nights I'm at the rink by myself because all my assistant coaches are working, and I'm just trying to get to the practice alive.
Sure.
So yeah. I think it's value for sure.
To answer your question, or your thoughts are valid. Obviously, I was being a little bit facetious when I said, can my daughter come play for you? Because that has not been my experience in youth hockey, the communicative coach. So, and I've got some horror stories that I could share, but, so communication personal communication is fantastic. If you have trust between the coach and the kid, that's huge, right? And trust between the coach and the kid and the parent is huge. Wally and I spoke yesterday about, if as a coach, you've got parent issues, whatever, we all know what those might be. You're spending time and energy dealing with issues or focused on them. You're burning that time and energy on the wrong things. So, it's communication helps mitigate issues. So this platform, Power Player platform, is not intended to replace you high-fiving a kid after a great game, or it's not about that. It's about providing a way for you to coach from your couch, basically. After a game, after a weekend tournament, you could go home and go, man, that was great. We did great. You can jump into this thing, give everybody a couple of comments, couple of digital high fives, upload. We've got coaches uploading, stupid videos off YouTube, funny stuff that's got nothing to do with hockey because it's funny, right? And so it's a way to bring people closer together, and it doesn't distance you. It brings you closer together. And I've got numerous, especially coaches of younger kids, a lot of younger kids, if they're shy, they're scared of my kids would never have asked their coaches a question ever. That's not my kids. They were just like, no, scared of coach, because Coach Bob or whatever determined their ice time. They didn't want to let Coach Bob know they didn't know something about the power play or about penalty killing. They just fake it, because if they asked them, that would let Coach Bob know they don't know, and they were scared of Coach Bob. So, I would ask, and the other thing, and I'm not a hockey genius. I've watched a lot of Hockey Night in Canada, that for whatever that's worth. But when my kids would get in the car after practice, I'd ask them, "Hey, how was practice? What's the answer?" "Good." "Oh, okay. What did Coach Bob say to you?" "Nothing." And I say to my son, "You're playing junior hockey. No coach has ever said a word to you. It's unbelievable. How did you get there? Like, no coach has ever said anything to you, as far as you've told me. He just learned the game by osmosis, or what?" So, some mechanism to provide me with trust. And I'm going to relate it directly to dollars. If I'm paying $10,000 for my kid to play hockey, I need to trust exactly what's going on there. I sent my kid to a private school. That was not cheap either, but I had absolute trust in those instructors. They were on the phone to us. They were on by email to us. They were wide open as professionals instructing my daughter in her academics. Why don't I get that from a coach? Is it too much work? Like, I don't understand how it can be too much work. I don't get it, because if it's too much work for them and I'm paying them $10,000, if I paid them $12,000, would that make it happen? I just see it as a huge lack. And it, in my experience, and again, I can only look at this from my own experience, nature hates a vacuum. Okay. And so do hockey parents. Okay. If they don't hear anything or they don't get any feedback, they will create their own analysis of what's going on. And it may not be accurate. As a matter of fact, it probably isn't accurate. So, if I, as a coach, can provide, periodic metrics, a stream of feedback that is collected in a format that can be accessed later. If some issue does arise, we can go back into that stream of feedback and kind of look at what's happened, what we've seen as coaches. Here's the data to back up the decisions that we made about, what to do to help your child. And that to me is an opportunity to alleviate difficulty down the road. So, I understand what you're saying about communicative coaches. I wish there were more. I had one coach, I think he was coaching 10-year-olds. He said he had this one kid who was coming to practice and he never had a smile on his face. He's like, he said, he's one of those kids I could never tell if he was playing hockey because his dad wanted him to, or because he wanted to. He goes, he tried hard. He wasn't a great skater. He just only been skating a couple of years, whereas other kids have been skating 3 or 4 years. And he goes, so we did the skating metrics thing and power player. We did some stick puck skill stuff. And they kind of made it like a NHL combine. They brought in pizza for the kids, and the kids thought it was like the big leagues. And then he called me one day and he said, we did the fitness off ice stuff. It's just like push-ups and sit-ups and standing long jump, basic stuff that you can do in the rink lobby. And again, they made it like a big deal for the kids. And he goes, I got a call at 9:00 at night from this kid's mom. And he said, as a coach, when you get a call at 9:00 at night from a parent, that's probably not good. So he goes, but I answered the phone. And he said, it was this young guy's mom. And she said, he got home and he'd opened up his Power Player app. He got a ping on there and he saw how he did. And he basically crushed the fitness thing. He's like the fittest kid on the team. And she goes, he's in the basement right now doing push-ups. So, like he's so excited. He's so jacked up. He can't wait to come to practice. So the coach said he got on the app and he sent the kid a little note through the app. It goes to the parent too. He said something to the effect of, if you work as hard on your skating, half as hard on your skating as you obviously worked on your push-ups, you're going to be a fantastic skater. Don't worry about it. See you Thursday. So that kid showed up at the rink Thursday, high-fived the coach. He said, he never even made eye contact with me before. He literally, it changed his whole demeanor just to have that little piece of communication, because I could tell him 20 times, good job. When he saw it, he knew it. So it's not intended to replace personal communication. It's intended to enhance it. As a matter of fact, the more, the merrier. The more connected players are to the adults who have to or are tasked with helping them progress, I think is beneficial. I think somebody else had a hand up at some point. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Tom Malloy?
Yeah, I just, I like the idea of, I taught phys ed for 1,000 years. So
That's a long time.
yeah. And when the kids, the first part of every class was they ran and then they did their exercises. And I would give them a plus or a minus